Washburn Show continues where you can sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. Mueller monologue coming up. I just want to say about the whole Iran thing. President Trump said 6:44 p.m. Saturday, if you guys don't just open up the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours exactly, we're going to take out your power plants, starting with the biggest one. And so 48 hours exactly, because I looked at his Truth Social. That would be 6:44 p.m. Central today. So now earlier today, he's like, hey, you know what? Over the last couple of days, started negotiating with these folks. I think we might get somewhere. And Iran, whoever's left in charge, is like, no, we are not negotiating with President Trump. And for everybody who's concerned that he might not follow through, because we got to crush these people, what if this is a head fake on Trump's part? Young Steve filling in for young Tommy here producing today, and I can see the wheels are starting to turn. What if this is because these lunatics are already paranoid, right? I am not talking to Trump. Who are you talking to Trump? So I wouldn't be surprised if they go ahead and do a number on the power plants this evening, because Iran, yes, they were threatening to take out desalination plants of some of their neighboring countries who they've been hitting anyway. And I don't think Trump wants that to happen because people have to drink water. Anyway, so I just thought I get that off my chest. We've been planning this Mueller monologue since he passed on Saturday, but we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So I didn't want you to think that I'd forgotten about what's developing with Iran. And thank God President Trump is not getting us into a forever war. We've had a war they've been at war with us since late 79. They've killed, between Iran and their proxies, they've killed over 1,000 Americans. And thank God President Trump is trying to bring that to an end. All right, now, 12:26 Central Time Saturday afternoon, President Trump posted the following on his Truth Social media account. Quote, Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. ! President Donald J. Trump. Now, that post was quickly shared on other social media and just as quickly condemned by people who said they believed that the language President Trump used was beneath the dignity of the office of president. So this is kind of a big deal. The President of the United States and a former FBI director who was also special counsel investigating Trump for almost 2 years. So I think it would behoove us to consider the president's statement in light of who Robert Mueller was. Now, we do have the audio clips ready, right? Okay. I don't recall too many objections when Hillary Clinton said this about the demise of Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011.
We came, we saw.
Okay, now I'm hearing my voice. Okay, I don't hear anymore. So the listeners on the radio, will they hear the echo, or is that just a Doc thing? Okay, that's more like a Pink Floyd voices in my head kind of thing. Or Cheap Trick. You didn't know what you're looking for till you heard the voices there. Okay, all right, I got it. So I don't remember anybody complaining Hillary Clinton back in 2011 laughing about Muammar Gaddafi being dead. We came, we saw, he died. I mean, other than the fact that once Gaddafi saw us dragging Saddam Hussein out of the spider hole in Iraq, Gaddafi did a 180. He said, you know what? I don't really need a weapons of mass destruction program. Tell you what, why don't I start getting along with you guys, the Americans, and, maybe you won't kill me. And we just steamrolled over him anyway. So some people had a problem with that. But overall, people were like, okay, Hillary, we came, we saw, he died. No big deal. But a lot of folks are holding President Trump's statement about former FBI Director and Special Counsel Robert Mueller to a different standard because, let's face it, Gaddafi was a Muslim dictator, whereas, on the other hand, Robert Mueller was a decorated Marine lieutenant who served in Vietnam years before he ever became FBI director. He got a Bronze Star and a bunch of other medals and apparently served quite valiantly in Vietnam. And people are like, hey, come on, man. Come on. He's a war hero. Come on, give me a break. President Trump, why'd you have to say that? So some folks are accusing the president of taking a cheap shot and being less than gracious about a man who they saw as being merely a political opponent of President Trump. So here's what former President George W. Bush said on X, and I quote, "Laura and I are deeply saddened by the loss of Robert Mueller. Bob dedicated his life to public service. As a Marine in Vietnam, he proved he was ready for tough assignments. He earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart before returning home to pursue law. In 2001, only 1 week into the job as the 6th director of the FBI, Bob transitioned the agency mission to protecting the homeland after September 11th. He led the agency effectively, helping prevent another terrorist attack in U.S. soil." Excuse me, wait, what? So the Boston bombing didn't happen? So the husband and wife jihadists who slaughtered a bunch of their co-workers a few months after they did a baby shower for them in San Bernardino, California, that didn't happen? What do you mean, helping prevent another terrorist attack in U.S. soil? Boston bombing, like 3 people were killed and at least 100 wounded, right? Dude, what are you even talking about right now? And there are plenty of others, but, you know. Anyway, George W. winds up his tweet over there on X saying, "Laura and I send our heartfelt sympathy to his wife of nearly 60 years, Anne, and the Mueller family," unquote. So I think it's in our best interest to actually look at Robert Mueller's record as we try, not being influenced one way or the other by former President Bush, but as we try to determine whether we believe President Trump's posthumous condemnation of Mueller was justified. Well, first of all, let's go to the great Hans Mahncke, Mahncke, author of the book, The Swift Boating of America. Over on X, he had this to say about President Trump's statement. He said, "It's totally understandable why President Trump would feel this way after what was done to him, but I'd argue it's even worse than that. The real crime was what Democrats and the media did in using a half-dead Robert Mueller as their figurehead, propping him up as a respected front for their evil enterprise, essentially like a mafia running in the shadow of a senile old man." And it wasn't just Trump, but dozens of innocent people they set out to destroy, and in many cases did destroy. The real criminals remain active, and not one has been made to answer for their deeds. Okay, next, back in 2022, it was revealed that during questioning from Special Counsel John Durham, FBI Supervisory Counterintelligence Analyst Brian Auten revealed that way back in October 2016, the FBI offered former British spy Christopher Steele $1 million if he could corroborate allegations in the infamous Steele dossier, which is what led to all the Russiagate investigations. But Steele couldn't do it for $1 million. He couldn't corroborate any allegations in his own dossier. Fox reported FBI's Brian Auten repeatedly admitted under questioning from John Durham that the FBI never got corroboration of the information in the Steele dossier, but they used it anyway. in the initial FISA application to spy on Carter Page and Trump, and in the 3 subsequent renewals, not to mention using it in the official intelligence community assessment, the predication of continuation of the open-ended Crossfire Hurricane Enterprise investigation, and eventually the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller. Now, a lot of people have come to the conclusion that our law enforcement and intel agencies ran an op on the presidential candidate, Donald J. Trump, based on information which they knew was made up by the other presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton, that this should be considered treason, and that it even may be worse than anything that happened on January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol. Fox News and the New York Post both reported that Clinton crony Charles Dolan Jr. lied about the source of the Steele dossier. That wound up in the discredited anti-Trump report, and Mueller's team denied requests by FBI agents to investigate Democrat operative Charles Dolan for ties to the Kremlin himself. Now, are you like me? Do you find it odd that Robert Mueller's partisan team of hacks wiped their cell phones after the sham Russiagate hoax failed? Do you find it odd that the same thing happened with the sham January 6th committee, and the same thing happened to Hillary Clinton's email servers and her team's Blackberries before and during investigations? Everybody wiped everything. Hillary's team actually took hammers to their Blackberries, and no one was ever held accountable. Now, coming up, because we got to run to a break, coming up, we're going to have Lou Dobbs back in the day, back when he was still on the Fox Business Network, before they decided he was too conservative and they kicked him to the curb. We're going to have a clip coming up. Lou Dobbs talking to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch about all of this stuff 5.5 years ago, back September 2020. That's coming up as the Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1, The Answer.
Up the files, some odd phones. This is outrageous. This sounds like Hillary Clinton all over again.
101 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, where you can sound off and talk back at 501 401 1011. Are you sure that what President Trump said about Bob Mueller upon his demise Saturday? Are you sure that President Trump was okay? I'm hearing echo phones. Okay, great. Are you sure President Trump was out of line? Because I'm not so sure, and I'm trying to make the case here. So we got the clip of Lou Dobbs back in September 2020 interviewing Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, and it's just a little over a minute long. Here you go. All righty. It likes to buffer sometimes. Well, I mean, you lay that at the feet of Bill Barr. Now we're going to get to what Mueller did to Manafort here in a minute. But first of all, former Deputy Attorney General Jeff Clark, a good man whom I have interviewed, is over on X saying this. If I had wiped my DOJ phones, I had two, one for each division I ran. If I had wiped my DOJ phones when I left DOJ, January 14th, 2021, either directly in a few iPhone steps or using the accidentally on purpose method of inputting the wrong password repeatedly, I have no doubt I would be in jail. So you wouldn't be seeing this tweet. Contrast that with Jeannie Rhee's treatment, R-H-E-E. She was one of the main lieutenants for the Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation of the Russia hoax, yet she's off totally scot-free despite engaging in obstruction of justice, destroying government documents. But welcome to yet another indication of our two-tiered system of justice. My buddy Paul Anders agrees over there on X, saying it's a fact. Mueller's team of lawyers and the special counsel wiped their phones. We now know they thought there was going to be an investigation afterwards. Even a suggestion that they needed professional liability insurance. If any got it and wiped their phones, that is obstruction. Now, the great Technofog, and I have recommended his Substack to my audience on more than one occasion. He's over in X reminding us way back in 1965, the FBI framed 4 men in the Boston, Massachusetts area for murder. They framed them, partly to cover up for their informant, mass murderer mafia boss, Whitey Bulger. When the cover-up was discovered decades later, FBI Director Robert Mueller was asked for the FBI position on the convictions of these 4 men who were framed. Mueller's FBI lied about the evidence, denied the men's innocence, and only conceded that they could have a new trial. By the time these men were able to file suit for what had been done to them, Two of them got millions, and the estates of the other two who had died in prison, innocent men in prison, the estates got millions. That's who Bob Mueller is. So never forget, speaking of Manafort, Robert Mueller put Paul Manafort in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. There was no real crime. Mueller was just trying to put pressure on Manafort to lie about having dirt on Donald J. Trump. So, how are we not to come to the conclusion that Robert Mueller was a monster who did not deserve the eulogy given him by former President George W. Bush, but richly deserved the posthumous condemnation of President Trump? Well, at least now maybe can't hurt, not maybe, but at least now he won't be able ever to hurt anybody again. The great Mike Davis over at Article 3 Project says, Bob Mueller, like so many leading federal prosecutors, was sanctimonious, narcissistic, and delusional. He lacked judgment. He was highly destructive to our democracy at best. He allowed his highly partisan deputies like Andrew Weissman to stroke his ego and manipulate him. And again, Hans Monkey checking in saying, Mueller's misdeeds prior to becoming special counsel are well documented, but far less is known about just how far gone he was during the entire period. We know that by July 2019, when he had that train wreck appearance before Congress, he was a senile old man. We also know he had no real operative role as special counsel beyond signing whatever papers Andrew Weissman put in front of him, as shown by the fact that he never once spoke to George Papadopoulos, the supposed linchpin of what he was supposed to be investigating. So the real question is how far gone he already was when he took the job. My guess is that he was already well past it, and that Weissman and the others told him to stay home, or on the days he did show up at the office, parked him in a room with old Matlock episodes on a loop while they ran the coup against Trump. Now, that is something that needs to be answered, especially since all those people who were running rings around him are all still alive and all walking free. Coming up after the bottom of the hour news, we're going to have some clips of Republican members of Congress making Bob Mueller look like an idiot when he testified in 2019. The Doc Washburn Show continues. 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. You can sound off and talk back. 501-401-1011. We're talking about Mueller and the fact that so many people were so upset. They thought that what President Trump said when it was announced that Mueller had passed away was very inappropriate. And I'm just trying to put some context to it. You know, this would not be like is saying nasty things about somebody who was just a political opponent. Mueller was a guy who was trying to put a lot of innocent people in prison for the rest of their lives. I mean, I hope you can understand that. So, tell you what, young Steve, the first clip we want to go to is a guy who was a U.S. representative from Republican from Ohio, Steve Shabbat, who was kind of flabbergasted that one of the main deals of this whole 22-month Mueller investigations, Mueller didn't even know what the guy was talking about. And it was the company that basically funded the dossier that the whole thing was predicated upon. So here is U.S. Representative Steve Shabbat questioning Robert Mueller. It's not a trick question. In other words, I mean, Fusion GPS produced the opposition research that was the basis for you spending almost 2 years investigating Trump and a whole bunch of other people. And you don't even know what we're talking about. I mean, that should tell you something right there. And Mueller was willing to be used. And indeed he was. All right, now here's where it gets kind of deep. You got a guy named John Ratcliffe for many years, conservative Republican U.S. representative from Texas. He eventually became director of national intelligence for Trump towards the latter part of Trump's first term, and he's now CIA director. And so, just as a U.S. representative, just representing one little district in Texas, because Texas is a big state, and they got a bunch of congressmen, a bunch of congressional districts. He's just trying to drill down and make some sense of the whole Mueller thing. And I don't think he's being unfair. I don't think he is, in any way being disrespectful. He even says a few times in this thing, with respect, sir, please. So we've got about 3 minutes. I chopped it up into 8 clips. So let's just start with U.S. Representative Ratcliffe grilling Mueller. Cut 1, please. Look out. Here we go. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe, September 2019, grilling Robert Mueller. Cut 2, please. Now, Representative Ratcliffe used a word that most of us outside of legal circles are not familiar with. It's a word that we do not use in common parlance. It's a word that we have to look up the first time we hear it. Declination. In other words, that means, well, the root is decline, but we've just never heard declination. We're not used to that word. It sounds weird to our ears. In other words, you're supposed to tell either we decided to prosecute or we declined. Declination. We declined to prosecute. So, if I may, because he was such a big deal in Texas sports for so many years. At this point, John Ratcliffe is like Nolan Ryan, who correct me if I'm wrong, young Steve, but I believe he pitched for the Astros and the Rangers. And he's rearing back, and it doesn't matter who's at the plate. He's getting ready to see a 98-mile-per-hour fastball, which might have a little English on it. And he's not going to be able to get the bat around. So we're going to go with U.S. Representative Ratcliffe grills Mueller. Cut 3, please. Oh. Let me just give you a little hint. There's not one. The job of a special counsel or any other federal prosecutor, or if I may, even a state prosecutor, is not to determine that somebody is exonerated. See, here's how it works. I know just this much. You're supposed to see if you can come up with enough evidence to give whoever your line prosecutor is a fighting chance in court to persuade a jury that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This whole idea of, well, we couldn't prove his innocence. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I'm getting way ahead of U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe. He'll say it a lot better than I can. Here's cut 4, please. Oh! Now, something you might not have caught, because they're kind of talking over each other at one point, and not as a sign of disrespect, but it just happens in regular conversation between two people who respect each other anyway. I can't, but this is unique. Oh, yeah, it's unique, Mueller, because your marching orders are to take Trump down and to do whatever it takes to take Trump down. And so you can violate all of the legal rules and regulations, all the standard procedure, because this is unique. We got to take the guy down. That's why this is unique, Mueller. All right. Again, this is September 2019. Mueller is under oath. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe is going hard, but tough but fair. He's not saying or doing one thing that's not fair. He's trying to advocate for the rule of law, for goodness sake. That's what Ratcliffe is doing here. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe grills Mueller. Cut 5, please. Do you get it? They don't determine somebody's innocence because a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Well, we couldn't really exonerate him. That's not your job. That's not your job. You either have enough evidence to take him to court and get him found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury, or you got to drop it, man. And instead, they kept it going for almost 2 years and spent, what, $30 million? Interview hundreds of people. I mean, it is just outrageous what they did. And okay, let's go with what cut are we up to now? Yeah, okay. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe grills Robert Mueller under oath. Cut 6, please. Remember, the prosecution or declination decision. We either decided to prosecute or we declined declination. We declined to prosecute. And Ratcliffe is just painting Mueller in a corner, and Mueller is too far gone. He doesn't even know what's going on. And I have absolutely no sympathy for him. U.S. Representative Ratcliffe grills Mueller under oath back in 2019. Cut 7, please. Ow! But I tell you what he did do. He gave millions of liberals in this country the impression, hey, just read Mueller's report. Trump broke all kinds of laws. He committed all kinds of crimes. And they ignore the fact that Mueller was like, well, but we couldn't really prosecute. We declined to, Unfreaking believable. We got one more cut. U.S. Representative John Ratcliffe, September 2019, grilling former FBI director, former special counsel Robert Mueller under oath. Cut 8. Oh! Now, when you hear that slamming right there, remember 2019, the House was controlled by Democrats. So the chair of the committee was a Democrat, and Ratcliffe's time was up, and whoever the chair was not happy. Now, after the break, we got to give you some information about one more innocent person that Robert Mueller was more than happy to rake over the coals. As the Doc Washburn Show continues, 101.1, The Answer. One oh one point one, The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, where you can sound off the talk back at 501-401-1011. So Svetlana Lakova, Now, that's a Russian sounding name, but she's a British citizen, and she is someone that Robert Mueller was more than happy to throw under the bus. Claimed that she was Mike Flynn's girlfriend. She says, I will never get back those precious days of my newborn baby because of Mueller and his thugs. I was relentlessly attacked in the media and received death threats. They falsely portrayed me as a Russian spy who had an affair with a senior Trump advisor so they could supposedly investigate President Trump. It was all part of their plot to impeach and remove him from office. The attacks and threats were relentless. On the advice of the Metropolitan Police, my husband and I had to put our baby things into storage and go into hiding. I was already suffering serious health problems from childbirth after extreme bleeding. The stress made everything far worse. I was weeping constantly while trying to hold my baby. I already lost my job because of the false allegations. I had recurring nightmares that the FBI would come and take me away, leaving no one able to feed her as she was breastfed. Mueller was never held accountable for what he did, at least not on this earth. She also said last October, the FBI paid their spy to make up lies about me, a private citizen. They published these lies, causing me to go on the run with a baby because of threats. Then after the truth came out, thanks to President Trump's declassification, Biden's FBI stole and hid the documents exonerating me. So she also has an embedded video of Devin Nunes back when he was still a member of Congress. She says, they have put me and my family through hell during and after the Russia hoax, just when my baby was born and my husband and I were supposed to be receiving congratulations and enjoying family time. The CIA, the FBI, and British intelligence put out false stories saying I had an affair with President Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, and I'm a Russian spy. The witch hunt was well organized. They sent people to my house, visited my colleagues, neighbors. I had to flee my home, lost my job, my career. It was all lies. And they knew it, which is why Mueller didn't even interview me. Now we know he was probably suffering from dementia and someone else was running things. Lock the criminals up. Now here's what Devin Nunes said to Mueller. The first Trump associate to be investigated was General Flynn. Many allegations against him stem from false media reports that he had an affair with an academic at Cambridge University, Svetlana Lakova, and that Lakova was a Russian spy. Some of these allegations were made public in a 2017 article written by British intelligence historian Christopher Andrew. Your report fails to reveal how or why Mr. Andrew and his collaborator, Richard Dearlove, former head of Britain's MI6, spread these allegations, and you failed to interview Svetlana Lakova about these matters. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, you can miss me with your concerns that President Trump said, I'm glad he's dead. At least now he can't hurt anybody else. Because that's just the truth. That is the truth. All you people who get so upset when President Trump uses the cuss word, or who don't get upset when he uses the cuss word, but you are upset about what he said about Mueller posthumously, y'all can just miss me with all that. Will there ever be accountability? We'll talk about it after 5 o'clock news. 101.1 The Answer.